I know it's hard to believe when they look like this, but these little guys are gonna grow up to be the most difficult animals you'll ever own.
How do we know? Because hundreds of homesteaders told us that goats were the hardest animal they ever had, or currently have.
We found that 30% of homesteaders who go out and get one of these cute little babies will eventually wind up getting rid of them, quitting on their goats. Why is that? It's kind of like that movie Gremlins. Do you remember? That guy goes and he sees that cute fuzzy little creature. He's like,
what is that?
Mogwai.
I gotta have him. He's incredible.
I gotta have it.
I'll give you $100 for him.
So without thinking or preparing, he just buys it, takes it back to his home. Before you know it, the entire town is like on fire. The truth is, with goats comes great responsibility. So in this video, we're gonna warn you about 11 problems you may face with these cute, adorable little creatures and how to be ready for them. We're gonna start at the, what do you call it, the bottom of the list? Number 11. You're being forewarned, so if you ever decide to get into goats, we can at least say we warned you.
With Mogwai comes much responsibility.
The first reason that goats are a difficult animal is because you can't feed them after midnight. Oh, no, wait, that was a different animal. Noise, that's the reason. Reason number 11, they can be noisy. Trigger, for sure, was the noisiest goat we ever had.
Yeah, we did not keep her very long. Our neighbors called us and they said, Austin, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? They thought someone had gotten crushed by a tree because it was our goats screaming so loud.
Oh man.
Goats are a herd animal, so even the quiet ones, if they're alone, they're gonna be crying. They're gonna be looking for other goats. There's also gonna be reasons wanting to be fed that they're just gonna be loud. They're gonna be calling for you. If you don't want to hear them, set up their pen somewhere where they don't see you coming out of your house. Oh, they've come for me.
Reason number 10 that was mentioned by a lot of goat owners, this right here.
Bucks.
Bucks will grow up to be stinky. Something's going on there. He's prepping himself. He's getting it all over his face. They pee on their face and then they do the smolder. We once went and picked up a buck. He smelled so bad. I had to get Vicks Vapor Rub and I smeared it in my mustache. It looks so gross. This is by far the stinkiest drive I have ever made. Bucks can be not only stinky, sometimes because of all that testosterone, they can become jerks. They can butt you when you're not looking. Some could be dangerous, especially if they still have horns.
What we did, we went with a smaller breed. So the buck is much smaller. We make sure none of them have horns. And we keep the buck away from the does because we don't want the milk to have that bucky odor. We breed for temperament. And also a no-touch feeding and watering system works really good, especially for during the rut, because they've just peed all over their face and they want to rub up against you because they love you so much. So if you can make sure you don't go into the pen with them, it keeps you from smelling like a buck.
Number 9, shenanigans. Everything from winding up on the roof of your car to eating things right out of your pocket. No. It wouldn't be a goat video if we
without
didn't.
them eating something of ours.
I think Jenny said it best. They're like drunken teenagers. I had a goat eat a medical glove right from my hand as I was trying to dismantle another goat who had somehow tangled his horns in his hay bag. That was like double shenanigans combined. Shenanigans squared. There are times I wonder if their shenanigans, there it is, shenanigans, are worth it. That was Jenny from We the Fullers, and you can check her out and all the other homesteaders who ask to be shared. We'll have a link to their social media account in the description below.
So how to solve these shenanigans?
Easy, don't get goats, done. I think the biggest way to cut back on shenanigans is
mischief.
just good containment.
Yeah, give them lots of stuff to keep them busy, rocks to jump on and off of. Treat them like you're baby-proofing your house, baby-proof your barn.
Because they'll figure out how to open
They're so
stuff.
smart.
They'll figure out how to get into
doors,
stuff.
open latches, pop off garbage lids. It's all happened to us.
Yeah.
The number 8 reason people said goats were so hard to have were because of diseases. Oh. And this really isn't different than any other farm animal that you're dealing with. Just knowing what diseases are out there and how to prevent them, what to look out for. CL, CAE, Yoni, pink eye, polio, listeriosis, white muscle disease, pneumonia, ringworm, blow, tetanus, enterotoxemia. The list goes on and on. What can help you deal with this is proper nutrition, making sure they're getting the right vitamins and minerals, good biosecurity measures, careful goat purchasing. We had a really close call one time. We had driven hours to a farm east of us to find some baby goats. They were beautiful.
So cute.
And then we were walking around checking out their farm and I saw a whole group of goats there with open pussy lumps. It was obvious that it was CL. Those abscesses will burst, spread that pus everywhere, and our farm would have been officially contaminated.
Now when we go, we find really good, reputable goat breeders and we purchase from them.
For us, it's important that we find breeders who test for these diseases that are especially communicable, and we make sure that they test and have had negatives for their herds. That's why it's important for you to do your research, talk to your goat mentor, see what they recommend.
Continuing on our countdown at number 7, they are very injury-prone animals. Just by nature, they're very athletic. They can jump and they can flip and spin. They often will wind up hurting themselves. Wesley from Earnest Family Farm says goats seem to be more injury and sick prone. One of the goats got a piece of fence stuck through its eyelid, and the same goat also got its leg stuck several times on fences and on the milking stand. We have experienced this. We had a pair of does that had horns, and they were curious as goats are, and they would constantly be sticking their heads through holes, getting the horns stuck, and then you had to try to get them out of that hole while they're fighting you. So one of the things that we choose to make sure from now on with our goats is that they don't have horns. We have found they wound up getting into a lot more trouble, risking both injury to themselves and us with horns. Another thing you'll notice we take very seriously knowing how goats are. Whenever we have goat infrastructure, we make sure we are building it with these animals in mind. So for example, we don't have one of those cheap heat lamps from the hardware store that has the clamp that the goat's gonna knock over and start a fire in your barn. We have a metal chain screwed up into a ceiling rafter, hard plastic encased Premier One heat lamp case. We take this very seriously, so the goats can't knock that down and start a fire. Properly prepare for them.
Number 6 on why goats will be the hardest animal on your homestead.
Is it the face they're making?
Yeah.
They make ridiculous faces, that's why.
Hoof care. Your chickens don't need their nails trimmed. Pigs once in a while. Cows the same way. We can get away with 2 hoof trims a year for the cows. But the goats need much more regular hoof trimmings. If not, their hooves get overgrown. Moisture can get up inside there. You can get hoof rot. Solutions to help you deal with hoof issues in your goats. If you have an area where they can climb on a lot of rocks or more abrasive material, they can file their hooves down kind of on their own. Also have dry areas for them. This is another thing where you can breed and cull for good feet.
This is number 5?
Yes.
No, getting down there. I'm surprised this one wasn't number 1.
This is number
honestly.
1 for us.
For us, this has been the
hardest
thing about owning goats. Parasites.
We've had issues with internal parasites and external parasites. External, we could be talking about ticks and mites. Internal, we could be talking about coccidia, which is an intestinal parasite, a protozoa. You really have to watch kids. Barber pole worm or stomach worms, meningeal worms, lung worms, liver flukes. We shared on the channel our journey with our goats from a few years ago, Lacey and Gizmo, and how after they kidded, they both had a terrible problem with worms. they basically just got an extreme amount of blood loss from the worms inside of them.
Yeah, I mean, we had vets come to the farm and treat them.
They were incredibly anemic and thin, and we could not do anything to save them, despite our best effort.
I feel like I'm trying to go up and down escalator right now. Just nothing's working.
We are not experts in the field of battling parasites. We just did an interview with Deborah Niemann, who wrote the book Raising Goats Naturally. She gave us some awesome advice on the battle with worms.
Intestinal parasites are a problem that you need to deal with. A vet told me this over 15 years ago. She said, you will never get control of worms with drugs. It is all about the management. You know, you need to either be rotating pastures or have your goats on a dry lot, because grass is a really vital part of the parasite life cycle.
Deborah shared so much great advice on how to keep your goats healthy. If you're a Homesteady pioneer, that video is already in the library. You can watch the entire interview. There's a link in the description below that will take you right to that episode. If you're not a pioneer, don't worry, we're going to release a public version of that episode, so stay tuned for that, and check out Deborah Niemann's YouTube channel. We'll have a link below for that as well.
Welcome to our next installment.
I was gonna make the same joke.
Beat ya.
Welcome to Dead Goat Story Hour.
Our next installment on how we killed our dairy goats.
Number 4 on the list of why goats are difficult.
Yeah.
Poisonings. From either toxic plants and things they shouldn't eat, or eating too much of something they can eat.
Which they refer to as grain poisoning. This was just horrific.
Maybe you've heard this myth
Adage.
before that drives me nuts when I hear it. Goats will not eat something poisonous.
Wrong.
Baloney. Baloney.
We had goats we brought onto our property.
Beelined to rhododendron plant.
Which is very toxic.
Eat them and kill themselves.
And it was, if there are toxic plants in your goat's enclosure, get rid of them.
We pulled the rhododendron plant after we had this happen. We pulled it.
A lot of times people will get clippings from their trees. They trim the trees. Let's give these to the goats.
Yep.
Make sure they're okay for the goats to eat.
Yep. And of course now the other kind of poisoning you have to consider is the grain poisoning, they call it. If your goat busts out of its enclosure and gets into the grain barrel, it won't stop eating. It's like me when I find a fresh pile of homemade cookies.
Fresh pile.
I won't stop. I'll grain poison myself.
That's true. This may be something you have to worry about with your cows' poisonous plants, with your sheep and their feed. It's just all these things kind of are tucked into one cute little tiny package with goats.
That brings us to our top 3 reasons why more homesteads chose goats over any other livestock to be the hardest. We're going to get to those 3 in a second. If this video has warned you of something that you did not know previously could be a problem for goats, let us know you enjoy this kind of content by giving it a thumbs up. The 3rd reason why these animals are difficult. These gremlins are tricky when it comes to feeding and watering.
Don't give him any water to drink. Don't feed him after midnight.
You guys are really hungry.
There's a reason why we have the Goat Gremlin t-shirt, because we all know they're just like gremlins. We have a link below if you want to get yourself a Goat Gremlin t-shirt. Goats. You've probably heard this. I know I've heard it a million times. Oh, you're getting goats? Awesome. You can feed them trash. No, you can't feed them trash unless you want them to die.
Their feeding is going to be so dependent on where you're at.
Yes.
What they're getting from the browse in your area, what they're missing from the minerals.
It can be very tricky to know what you should be feeding them and what you shouldn't be. We talked to Deborah about this.
To start, you get a good free choice loose mineral, and you give them the appropriate forage that they need for their gender and life stage. Only milkers really need a 16% protein dairy goat or goat feed. Don't ever give goats something like just cracked corn or something like that. That's like giving candy to a child.
Do you have hard water? You may even be supplementing with these minerals, but if you have hard water, that could be preventing them from absorbing some of it. We actually get our goat's water from the house where we have a water softener.
Spoiled.
We're desperate to do it right.
We are not lying when we say these animals are they're the prima donnas
They're
of this
finicky,
homestead.
especially our dairy goats.
Yeah. It's tricky. It's very tricky, which is why it was number 3 on our list. Pretty soon, we're going to be sharing some video from Button's kidding that she just completed. And I have to say, if you watch this video, you would never know that kidding was the second biggest reason why people say goats are difficult. And these problems could even lead to losing not only some kids to death, but does as well. So kidding can be very, very difficult.
Our first kidding was great. The next one we had was great. And there is a huge percentage of kiddings that go fine. But we did get 2 after that the doe wouldn't let her kids nurse. She just kind of dropped them on the ground and walked away from them, didn't care for them at all. Next one, Lacey had a huge buckling that we had to reposition.
Which is actually our most popular YouTube video we've ever made. Is that?
Really?
That yeah, it's got like a million
I think I'm
views.
like 2 weeks postpartum too. I was not wanting.
Yeah, so if you want to see
help a
that
goat
video,
deliver.
you can see it. You can
right.
see a lot of our goat failures over the years. You know, as you prepare for your own kiddings, how to make sure it goes smoothly. Be sure to educate yourself.
Yeah.
A big part of what Deborah warned was not being aware of what's actually happening, assuming there was a problem when there wasn't, assuming things would work themselves out when they wouldn't. Knowing the difference between what should happen and shouldn't is a big key to having a successful kidding, because she did say most of your goats you'll actually be able to help.
And the thing to remember too is that like a kid does not die just like instantly, you know, like that's where I see people freak out is they're like, oh my God, I have to do something now or the kid's gonna die. No, it's not. In most cases, like, you know, if you know when the goat started pushing, you have hours. I had a goat that started pushing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Her kids were born at 1 o'clock in the afternoon by C-section, and 3 of the 4 were born alive.
Wow.
So that experience, that was like, I just was completely chill after that. They're going to be fine. Like, I don't have to do anything right this second. You know, I've got time to call a mentor. I've got time to call my vet. I've got time to drive 2 hours to get to the vet hospital.
This brings us to the number 1 reason mentioned by more homesteads than any other reason as to why goats are difficult. I'll give you like 3 seconds. Comment below. You have to know at this point, what have we not talked about that is synonymous with goat problems? Fencing. Yes. When it comes to fencing, I don't think there's a harder animal to contain than goats. Some animals can jump over fences. Some animals can squeeze under fences. Some animals can squeeze through holes. Some animals will ram fences till they break. Goats, well, they'll do all those things and more. This story from Alexandra kind of sums up what goats and fencing equals. She had a 200-pound Nubian doe in milk. We had set up electric poultry netting and for some reason temporarily moved our milk stand only a couple of feet away. I squatted down to start milking. She dramatically threw herself and the entire metal stand on top of me, so I ended up sandwiched between the electric netting, a 200-pound goat, and a metal milking stand. As soon as I realized I was being shocked repeatedly, this is such a goat story, I managed to escape and we were both physically unharmed. Goats will use fences.
They'll use them against
as a tool. Yeah, they'll turn it against you. So when it comes to goats and fences,
There's old adage, right? Is make it
bull strong,
pig tight,
horse high.
horse high. You know why they don't say goats?
Because there's nothing that works for goats.
Because it wouldn't work for goats.
We finally have a goat-proof fence thanks to our friends at Kenco Farm Fencing. Eli helped walk us through this process. What is a good goat fence? So here's a clip of that.
Thanks, Eli. What you guys helped us design as far as goat fencing goes. How do you make sure when you're going to get some goats, especially if they're little ones like what we have, they stay in?
Well, typically you're going to go with a woven wire situation. We call our 4x4 woven wire sheep and goat fence. Fixed knot, and it's not going to slide left or right. This is great as a physical barrier, as a visual deterrent, and then your electric adds the psychological.
Yeah.
Height-wise, probably 40 to 48, or depending on how athletic they are.
It works. It keeps the goats in. We never have goats escape on this homestead. Why are goats this much of a problem? Because I think you underestimate them.
Yes, I think we get into goats as our second livestock.
Yeah, like we
After
had chickens, let's
why?
get some goats.
They're small.
Because they look like that.
They're readily available.
Oh, yeah.
We've been told they're easy, right?
Yeah.
But it's not true, especially with dairy goats.
Yeah.
I warned you, but you didn't listen.
So maybe you're wondering, if we think goats are so hard, why do we even have them? The truth is, my daughter wanted to get back into goats, and we couldn't say no. So here we are, back in goats. That said, they are a challenging animal to own, and if you're a beginner, you'd be much better off to start with an easier livestock that doesn't try to eat your camera. There are a lot of animals that are much, much easier, and if you're wondering what is the easiest livestock, watch this video. We rank livestock easiest to hardest based off not just our opinion, but hundreds of other homesteads who voted. Find out who they voted were the easiest animals all the way up to the hardest.